Hey everybody, still don't have a name for you guys. Don't think I'll ever figure out one unless you guys have a really good suggestion. So I'm just gonna keep on alternating around. But I wanted to do another challenge. So I ended up asking my husband and girlfriend because I couldn't think of anything, or I just kept on thinking of everything, but I was like, I've already done those before. So as I was just sort of looking at a whole bunch of things, my girlfriend recommended the color palette challenge. I looked around and I found a few different sites, which the first one I didn't end up going with, but it was from Adobe, I believe. And it's great if you want palettes that truly work together, even having options between tertiary, complementary, contrasting, and so on, which is cool if you want a perfect palette, which I kind of didn't. It also had the option where you could choose your own colors, but you couldn't really make them work together. Either way, like I said, I wanted an actually random palette, so I found this other palette site called Coolers, which did seem to have a higher chance of giving you palettes that looked good together, but every once in a while it would just throw you in for a loop. So I just ended up hitting the random button about 10 times, and I went with the color I got from there. So right off the bat, I had no idea what to do with this palette. All the palettes I had seen prior when searching had been pretty good together, and this was quote unquote the worst one I had seen. So I stared at the colors for a good solid 5 minutes, and I asked said girlfriend and husband for ideas. The first thought that I had was maybe fire or something, because I could kind of see it being the blue from the hottest part of the fire going off into the reds and everything. But I felt like the problem I'd run to would be the rules of the challenge, so I wanted to look for some other ideas as well. My husband ended up suggesting Pearl, and it just ended up being a sketch of all 4 of them. I originally just wanted to draw just Pearl, like our main Pearl, and then somehow Pink's Pearl just squeezed into the background, and I started to draw the other 2 because I thought the palette kind of worked for their base colors. So it ended up being all 4 of them. I did wonder whether I should do show style for this, because they do have a very simplistic cutout style that I could have ended up doing for this, but then I wanted to try doing something actually a little challenging with this. So I started to just do their normal style and use the darkest color for the line art, which is the same color I'd use for the background. Then I decided in order to follow a rule for the challenge, it may be better to have a more detailed style. So I just ended up doing a weird version of my style and scrapping everything that I drew at first. At some point, I started having to wonder what other kind of rules I wanted to follow for this challenge. I know some people will use like overlays, multiply, opacity, all that kind of stuff. So I ended up asking my girlfriend, since she suggested the challenge, what she thought. She said to do it strictly using only the colors I had, and if I wanted to, I could do gradients, but only for the background, not for any of the characters. When I asked her about shading, she sort of just shrugged at me, so that sounded like a personal problem for me. I heavily debated using gradients for the majority of this, but ended up deciding to use a weird way of mixing the colors by instead painstakingly drawing a bunch of lines to show any kind of shading or gradient instead. I ended up redoing some of the lines a few times too, because for some reason it became important for me to have all the shading facing the same direction, while also drawing each individual line instead of, just making a layer where I had a bunch of parallel lines and just erasing where I needed to. It ended up working out in the end, though I feel like I made it much harder than necessary. I just felt like my main goal of this challenge was to force a color palette I don't normally think of to work without sacrificing any colors or adding anything in. I kept on switching between whether volleyball or bird mom should be the white or the pink pearl, but eventually settled on this being a piece of them in their younger days and how they react to being in a room with an aggressive gem. I saw bird mom being the reserved but angry type, who looks the other way, just sort of doesn't say anything but just boils in anger. Blue pearl being more afraid and soft, yellow being overeager to please, and white pearl, well, she didn't exactly get much of a choice once becoming white diamonds. Then I got to the background, which I had no clue what to do. I tried doing the diamonds combined power thing, thought it looked kind of horrible and hideous. It also reminded me of like an iris, so I decided to try something else as I was trying to figure all that out. I ended up thinking about the clamshell or whatever it's called, where the pearls are made. Then I thought that was really dumb, so I just settled on something to do with space. I remembered my girlfriend's suggestion of doing gradients in the background only, tried it out to see how I wanted the colors, remembered I'm not a quitter, and undid everything I did for the past hour. I ended up using the previous background as a sketch and just sort of did the sketchy lines instead to get that color to kind of fade into one another. I think it kind of turned out okay, like, considering my limitations that I've set upon myself. But I think the background turned out a lot better than I thought it would. Honestly, I thought it was kind of interesting for a challenge, and I think I met my goal of only using the colors I needed. I know I'd probably fail it immediately if I had to do it with traditional art, especially if I decided to use paints, because I'd keep on mixing the colors, whether it be intentional or not. Maybe if I just had pens in those colors, it might work out, because it's a little bit harder to fade pens into one another. Not like Ohuhu pens or anything, but like an actual like ballpoint pen. But I'd probably just end up doing the same kind of thing I did with this piece if I had a pen, like with the sketchy lines and everything. I feel like if I did a more relaxed version of this challenge, I would, where I could use like gradients and layer effects, I could have done a much prettier piece, but I overall like the challenge of it. It's probably one I would try again, doing a more relaxed piece, or at least doing one with a more complementary palette. I probably would go for like a lineless style, but it was interesting using a more challenging palette with different saturations and tones and seeing where I could go with it. I'd probably recommend this challenge for people who are looking for random inspiration or who just want practice with like color theory or something.